Before we kick off, I'd like to remind you that we have two keynote speakers who will be delivering their presentations in English. And for those in the audience who wish to hear the simultaneous translation, you can go ahead and get the headsets. Let's welcome Mr. Praveen, Bracell's CEO.
Here today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everybody.
Portuguese I can speak. So sorry, I'll speak in English. It's a pleasure to welcome you for this edition of Bracell 2030. I know we are meeting after 2 years. 2 years have passed since we first launched our long-term sustainability agenda. Today, we come together to reflect our progress, renew our commitments, and envision what more we can build together for the future. In light of the major and important COP30 event happening here in Brazil at Belém, this event become even more special moment to listen, to exchange ideas, to deepen our connection with the people, with the sector, organization, communities that inspire our work. I want to greet and welcome all of you here, our government representatives, customers, suppliers, banking partners, members of the civil society, our employees and press who are joining us today. Special thanks to our keynote speaker, the panelists who have kindly accepted our invitations. I'm sure you all will bring valuable insights and ideas for this event. I would also like to thank Editora Globo and Valor Econômico for their continued partnership and support. We truly believe that Brazil has the potential to lead the global climate agenda, not by repeating just old models, but also creating new solutions rooted in regeneration, circularity, and innovation. Bracell and the pulp sector in Brazil want to be part of this path. Bracell has been operating in Brazil for last 20 years. During this time, our investment have exceeded more than 30 billion Brazilian reais. We have industrial units in Bahia, in São Paulo, and forestry operation in these two states, and also at Mato Grosso do Sul. We plant over 170 million trees annually. That's a lot of trees we plant. We are a global leader in production of dissolving pulp, specialty pulp, and kraft pulp. Our newest business unit, Bracell Papais, our tissue operations, is fully integrated with our pulp unit and equipped with rooftop solar panel that provides more than 20% of our tissue energy demand. We currently hold about 10% of the Brazilian tissue market share, and we export to over 20 countries worldwide. With significant investment in Brazil, we believe we are fulfilling our role as an industry that employs thousands of people, generate income, and create new business opportunity in the country. Bracell is part of Royal Golden Eagle, RGE, headquartered in Singapore. RGE has over 80,000 employees and more than $40 billion of assets. It manages global operations at Indonesia, China, Malaysia, India, Spain, Canada, and here at Brazil, and with a shared purpose, improving lives by developing resources sustainably. So let's return to the topic of sustainability we are here today to talk. It is important to remember that at Bracell, our business operations are based on our founders' 5C philosophy. It means that everything we do, it must be good for the community, good for the country, good for the climate, one of the reasons we are here today, good for the customer, then only it will be good for the company. Our operations are climate positive, absorbing more carbon than we emit. Under our 1-for-1 commitment, Bracell support the protection of more than 300,000 hectares of native forest in public conservation area in the states of São Paulo and Mato Grosso do Sul. At Bracell, we have multiple carbon flux towers in native and planted forest. It measures greenhouse gas emissions in real time to support climate science progress in Brazilian conditions. We are advancing innovation across all the areas. For example, control of forest pests with more than 250 million biological agents produced every year. AI-powered real-time wildfire detections covering more than 500,000 hectares in Brazil. Integration of road, rail, port system, reducing 50,000 truck trips annually. We are pioneers in precision forestry with digital-enabled platform. We are also front runners in fossil fuel-free pulp operations and renewable green energy solutions. In 2024, under our social investment platform, Bracell Social, we have positively impacted over 160,000 people in more than 100 municipalities here in Brazil. We have increased female leadership to 29.4%, close to our 30% target set for 2030. We live in a very competitive scenario in which we understand that sustainability is given and it is intrinsic to the sector. For Bracell, sustainability is an integral part of our business strategy, and it is driven from top and embraced at every level of the organization. For us, sustainability and business operations are two sides of the same coin. We focus a lot on execution discipline at each stage of our process, and I believe this makes Bracell different from others. So let's watch a short video that shows that it is time to act for a better planet for everyone. And thank you everyone, and enjoy the event. Thank you.
Nosso planeta precisa de respostas. Agora.
The world needs answers now. Things cannot stop. While the world hesitates, Brazil can lead. At Bracell, we already know the way, and clean energy, the biggest and greatest solar panel in Latin America. For every hectare of eucalyptus, 1 hectare of native vegetation is protected. But sustainability goes beyond that. Education, environment, and well-being. Stronger communities, social transformation. We are innovation that the planet needs. Leading is about caring, is about inspiring, is about doing, is about acting. And action, we can conjugate it in the plural and in the present. We act. Bracell, we make a difference in each and every single detail. Wow, it's quite impressive, isn't it?
Firing. Bom, agora a gente vai ter.
So now we're going to have a few updates for 2030's goals. Mr. Marco is the Vice President of Sustainability at Bracell. Welcome to the stage, Mr. Marco.
Good morning, everyone, and everyone who's online too. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the targets and the achievements on sustainability at Bracell. Exactly 2 years ago, we launched a Bracell 2030, which is a long-term sustainability plan that is based on 14 strategic pillars and 14 targets. And this is about the commitment to the planet, people, and sustainable development. And the progress of the plan through 2034 is that we are on the right path on the sustainability path. So let's go and show you a summary of everything that we are talking about today. So starting on climate, we is starting a positive operation for the climate. So we have a tangible results since the reduction of emissions and the reduction of carbon from the atmosphere. So we achieved 57 less carbon emissions. So we are very near of our targets of 75% by 2030. In addition, over the past 4 years, we have removed 4.3 million tons of CO2 from the atmosphere by using our forests and natural plantations to reduce carbon. And we will remove 13 million tons by 2030, which reaffirms our fight against the climate change. So we are also advancing in biodiversity. This is another pillar because our growth is not separate from the production systems at Bracell. And for this reason, we are building sustainable landscapes that favor biodiversity and nature. And in order to take care of nature landscapes, we have achieved 186,000 hectares of protected forests only with Bracell forests. This is a public environmental heritage that we are trying to preserve. We are also advancing on fauna with four certified areas and also 8 projects for research for protection of biodiversity. And in addition, we have 10 projects for this. And we also have an assertive methodology for endemic and threatened species. And we also have priority areas that are defined for these species, and this new methodology is ready to start in 2026. So now let's talk about our industrial production of cellulose. And we believe that we can only grow our business in a sustainable way with innovation, efficiency in the use of natural resources with a robust model. So let's talk about the use of natural resources with a reduction of 38% of baseline use. We are a benchmark in the industry of cellulose in Brazil, achieving 19.2 cubic meters of cellulose in the Brazilian. This is an outstanding mark in Brazil, and we are at 48% the reduction of waste in our industrial plants, and we have achievements of 90% by 2030. And talking about the efficiency in chemical recovery, we have achieved 96.2, which is very close of our target of 97%. And naturally, our most important pillar, and it cannot be different, is people. And we have a Bracell 2030. We are empowering our employees, our communities in which we work, by means of some programs that are enhancing equity and development of this community. And talking about diversity and equity, we have achieved 29.7 women in leadership positions at Bracell last year, and this is almost the target of 30% that is provided for 2030. So this is fantastic. Another important target is respect of equity with affinity groups at work. And about this topic, we have achieved 71%. This is the real perception that we have in our operations. So this is a very important step to build an inclusive and diverse work environment at the company. And talking about our relationships with the communities in which we work, so the communities that are benefited by the projects have increased their actual income in 8% by 2020. So this is very important, but we still know that we have a lot to go. We have a long way ahead of us to improve the quality of life of these people. And we are using all of our efforts. We are also increasing women's entrepreneurship in our communities, and we have achieved 64%. And these are our projects called Impact, and they are led by women, and we have overcome our target of 60%. And we are also trying to improve the public education in our communities, and we are following up the evolution of the teachings of the schools in terms of mathematics and Portuguese in the public schools. And we are using the SAEB program, which is a governmental program, and we are following up this. And then next year we have a better idea of our progress in this field. So about a 2030 program. So at each achievement that we get, we become a reference in sustainability. So we believe that we can ally business success and also with the climate, biodiversity, and empowering of people. And to end my presentation, in addition to the results of Bracell 2030, we also have the results of the commitment one by one at Bracell. So 1 to 1 is the innovative approach that transforms the growth of production in a leverage in order to protect the Brazilian biodiversity. For each 1 hectare planted of eucalyptus, we promise to protect 1 hectare of native vegetation. So every step we give in production, we take another equal step in protection. So we have a perfect balance in nature in our operations. In addition to the conservation in our own areas, we also have a commitment to protect public areas in conservation areas of the government. So we have partnerships with the states of São Paulo, Bahia, and also Mato Grosso do Sul. These public areas of conservation, so we try to prevent and combat wild forest fires. We improve the monitoring of biodiversity, and we improve the infrastructure of the parks in many ways. Since the launch of the program in 2022, we have evolved a lot with the 1 to 1 commitment, and we have conserved 1.08 hectare of forest for each hectare that we plant. So we can say that we have exceeded the target of the 1 to 1 commitment in 2025. And we can say that we protect and we help protect public areas and native areas more than the areas that we plant. So for you to have an idea of this commitment, in 2025 we have achieved the target of 302,000 hectares only with the areas protected by this commitment. And this is about 2 times the total area of the municipality of São Paulo. And this is a commitment that is above the average of the sector. And we have a sector that is advanced in conservation, as they are protecting, we are protecting 1.0 more than the average. And I think this is a commitment that we have that affirms that production growth can be an ally of Brazilian biodiversity. That is to say, the 1 to 1 commitment at Bracell shows that it is possible to grow and conserve at the same time, and reinforces our role as leaders in the protection of biodiversity. So thank you everyone, and have a good event.
Thank you, Marcio. Thank you very much. Well, it's a very important piece of information. It's important to know that you have been achieving your targets and goals. So now we are going to have the big picture, right? Mr. Marco Lambertini, who is a global coordinator at Nature Positive Initiative. He is the former general director at WWF International and former CEO of BirdLife International. He's going to be with us online. He will be answering the questions of our local audience and online audiences. For those who are here, there is a QR code. You can send your questions on through the QR code. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can write it on the chat box. You can write it either on English or Portuguese. We'll make sure we'll translate your questions. So, in case you need translation, make sure you wear your headsets. You can get them outside the auditorium. Ah, tá indo.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly awesome. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we can start with the presentation with the first slide, please. Obrigado, Leila. Obrigado, Leila. And
Thank you for your invitation.
today, and it was lovely to hear Praveen and Marcio speaking before me. You can start showing the presentation, please. Thank you. Great. So I was asked to talk about the extraordinary times that we are living today, the challenges and the opportunities of those times. And the title of my presentation is capturing that content. It is about the imperative of our time, the biggest challenge, but also the biggest opportunity perhaps humanity has ever faced in our history. It is the one of developing and living in harmony with nature. Our mother, our home, our lifeline. And is moving from a threat of tipping points, and I will describe those in a minute, to a turning point with the planet. Next slide. Before talking about nature, let's talk about people, because this is something that environmentalists like me normally don't talk enough about. And I think it's important to remind ourselves of the incredible progress that humanity has made in the last 100 years, but honestly, particularly in the last several decades. Yeah, thank you. And you can see here our some elements of our incredible advances and progress. Imagine that just at the start of the 20th century, so the beginning of 1900, life expectancy on average globally was below 40 years. Now is over 70. The percentage of population in extreme poverty, meaning malnutrition, the lack of a decent house, was 75%. Today is less than 10%. If you think about child mortality, again, at the start of the 20th century, just over 100 years ago, half of the children born in the world did not reach the age of puberty. So, today we are in a situation that probably we could say there's never been a better time for humans. Although there is a lot of inequality still, but for almost everybody on the planet, today is a better living condition than what it was 100 years ago. And the technology advancement has driven food security in many regions of the world, has improved nutrition, has, of course, triggered an explosion of human population over the last 70 years in particular. It took 300,000 years to get to the first billion people at the beginning of the 19th century. Then another 100 years to get to the 2nd billion. I was born at a time when on the world there were 3 billion, less than 3 billion people. Now we are almost tripled in my own lifetime. That's an element of the success of our species in the last 100 years and less. But all that progress, all that advancement had a dark side. Please click the next, thank you. And that dark side that we've been ignoring until now has been the decline of nature. Effectively, this is what we can call, you can click please, the development paradox of today. An economic model has worked very well until now for many people in the world, for most people in the world, and yet has destroyed and degraded the very natural resources and natural services that the economic model was based on. So clearly, although it has been successful until now, this model cannot continue in this way for much longer, because nature is reaching a decline that is undermining its stability, its productivity, its health. Next slide. So this is what we have done to the planet until now, and we haven't really realized that until very recently. We have made the planet much hotter, and we have made the planet less rich of life. These are actually stripes that reflect truly the science data about global warming and about biodiversity loss over the last 50 years. Next slide. And this is another statistic that I love, because for me is extraordinarily powerful and shows how much influence we had on the makeup of the biosphere. If you weight all the human bodies today on the planet and all the animals that we farm to eat, that weight account for 96% of the weight of all mammals on the planet. 96%. 4% is everything else. Jaguars, peccary, rats, and just 100 years ago, this picture was exactly the opposite. So next slide. In a nutshell, we are having an impact on nature, on the planet, which is unprecedented in the history of our species, unprecedented in the history of the planet. No single species have ever had an impact like this. And we are trespassing the boundaries of what scientists call a safe space, a safe operating space. Whether it is climate change or biodiversity or pollution, we are increasingly crossing those boundaries and destabilizing the biosphere. Next slide. And we're reaching a point which is, again, completely new for our history, that scientists call tipping points. Tipping points are moments where certain systems, whether it is a weather system, whether it is an ecosystem, whether it is an ecoregion like the Amazon, those systems are pushed to the point where they are so degraded and so impacted that they're going to start behaving differently. They're going to change state. The Amazon forest from a tropical forest will become more like the Cerrado, a savanna, with huge implications for rainmaking, a fundamental role of the Amazon today, and therefore the precipitation patterns of rain in the region and beyond, for example. But this is exactly what is pushing us to act urgently and at scale in order to avoid those moments of tipping points. This is a difficult concept for us, tipping points. We never experienced that before. We always thought that, you cut a tree, you can plant another one. And it's true. But if you cut too many trees too fast, that tipping point will come. And then the soil will be eroded, the climate will change, and the tree will not grow back. That's an example in simple words of what the tipping point look like. Next slide, please. So basically where we are today, we have seen this great rise of humanity paralleled by great decline of nature. And we are reaching the point of the great threat of the tipping points. But the good news in all this is that I'm talking to you today at a time when we actually understand all this. This is a recent knowledge, at least at a public level. It's been known by certain scientists for much longer, but in terms of public awareness and awakening, this is a really recent phenomenon. Is now they're beginning to understand the impacts they were having, but also, next slide, please, the consequences that that impact is having, not just on the planet in abstract or on wildlife, actually on us, on our future and the future of our children. That's the great awakening. That's the moment of reckoning with what we have done until now, understanding that we need to change in moving forward. Next. So you can look at this as a moment of great danger, for sure, but also the moment of great excitement and a great choice. This awareness has been also embraced and grown in the business sector, in the economic sector. For the first time in 2020, the Global Risk Report of the World Economic Forum that interviews a lot of people around the world, from corporates, finance, political, and public, has identified environmental risks on a short term, on a 10 years horizon, as the majority of the risks perceived, particularly by business. Climate and biodiversity for the first time appeared in that category. And it's all about climate security, water security, and of course, the implications on climate and water security for food production. Those were the links that were more obvious in terms of risks and perception. Next slide. And so suddenly, together with climate, biodiversity, the loss of nature, ecosystem like forest, coral reefs, species that are so important to maintain the health of those ecosystems, also surge to a higher level of awareness and perception of risk. And that is changing completely the paradigm about nature conservation in the broader society, and particularly in business. Next slide, please. Initially, and I've been dealing with business in my NGO work for many, many years, the reason why business approached the issue of nature and biodiversity was really more on a moral and ethical basis. In some cases, simply a PR exercise to be seen as doing the right things for nature, because honestly, everybody in the world likes nature. Let's face it, nobody enjoys to see a forest going up in smoke or to see a species going extinct. So this was the original approach to nature from a business community. Then, of course, some regulations started to appear or was developing. And so there was an element of compliance. The framework of ESG was developed, and there was a stronger reputational dimension that business began to pay attention to as well as compliance. But now we are at a point where, because of what I said earlier, because of the perception of material risk, this is the driver, the new driver for business engagement on climate and nature and biodiversity. It is about material risk, costs that business incurs already and will increasingly incur in the future, and if we don't address our impact on nature. And of course, at the same time, business opportunities to do things differently, to de-risk, but also to generate new markets, new products, new practices, new technologies, innovation. So that's the trajectory of the last maybe 30, 40 years that I've seen in the business sector. And it's super exciting now that nature is becoming an argument increasingly discussed in management meetings, in board meetings, related to the business profitability and resilience strategy of a company. Next, please. And this was also triggered by the fact that, similarly to the Paris Agreement in 2015, in 2022, there was another big agreement that was focusing on biodiversity and that developed a global goal for nature to go hand in hand to the global goal for climate of Paris. And this was a signal approved by the world that biodiversity matters to society and matters to business as well. This goal is a goal of halting and reversing biodiversity loss by 2030. So halt and reverse. And that's important because it's not just about halting, it's about also restoring what we had degraded when it's possible. And it is what we, in a shorthand, call the nature positive goal. Next slide, please. And so this is the moment, on the back of this awareness, of the back of the threat that we are facing and perceiving increasingly as serious, there is the moment of the great choice. Either we stick to business as usual, the old model that has served us so well until now, but clearly cannot continue for much longer, and face the consequences of that business as usual approach, or we embrace a decarbonization and nature positive trajectory that de-risks our future and creates new opportunities at the same time. Next slide. And we know that it's possible to do that with four big areas of work. The first one, can you click please, is to restore, is to protect what is left on the planet. Protect the nature that is still intact on the planet. At least 30%, that's the goal, but more in moving forward. The second, click please, is to actually restore as much as you can, minimum 30% of what is degraded, because nature can come back on land, fresh water, in the ocean. Next, please. And then the most important, perhaps, elements of the transition, click please, is first of all, to transition key economic sectors that today are the generating the majority of the footprint of the negative impacts on nature: agriculture, fishing, forestry, extractives, infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing. Transition these sectors from nature negative practices to nature positive, regenerative practices that allow nature to regenerate and make a positive contribution to nature, not a negative one. And in order to transition these economic sectors, next one please, is to redirect financial flows, both public subsidies, but also private investment, to support those transitions, to support new practices, new technologies, nature positive and carbon neutral technologies and practices. Next slide. So just to now coming to the end of this overall picture, basically today the great transition is around two fundamental global goals. They are intertwined, they are supporting each other, they're mutually supportive. One is the carbon neutral global goal, decarbonizing. The other one, a net zero emission, through the net zero emissions in the way we generate energy, we use energy. And the other one is nature positive, and net positive biodiversity that protect and regenerate, halt and restore nature as we continue to develop. This is not about halting the development. In fact, this is about ensuring the development is continuing, because if we do destabilize climate and if you do destroy nature to the tipping points, this will begin to affect not only our prospect of future development, but also undermine progress made so far. And we are seeing already in certain regions of the world so deep impact of climate change that poverty, for example, is starting to grow back again. Next slide. So this is what the Nature Positive Initiative that I convene with a lot of organizations from environmental groups, but also standard setting agencies, like TNFD that you're familiar with, I suppose, and others, business platforms like the WBCSD, the World Business Council Sustainable Development, World Economic Forum, and many others, are coming together, next slide, to provide guidance on how to become nature positive, how to contribute to a nature positive goal. Because on climate, it's super clear. There is a CO2 equivalent tons as a metric of emission reduction. There is a greenhouse gas protocol that explains how to measure. And it's very clear and that's why many companies embrace that trajectory. When it comes to nature, it's still very complicated. There are so many metrics and indicators available out there. We counted more than 600. And this complexity doesn't help, particularly private sector that look at biodiversity as a new topic, a new material topic, and create confusion and paralysis and lack of action. And so, next, please. And so we are actually working to try to develop a small set of state of nature metrics, the outcome metrics, that together with the impact metrics would allow companies to develop strategies which are effective in de-risking, are effective in halting and reversing, and are effective and credible in reporting and disclosing. Next slide. We're going, this is almost finalized, but basically from 600 metrics, you will be happy to hear, we are going to suggest a framework of 4 indicators with attached metrics. And so a massive simplification just to focus on the most important dimension, the most important proxy indicators of nature. Ecosystem extent, the hectareage, that's what Marcio was mentioning earlier, how much you protect and avoid in loss. Ecosystem condition, how the forest is regenerating, is recovering. Landscape condition, how much nature, how much forest, how much riverine, forests along the rivers, how much natural features are, for example, in a farming landscape. And then extinction risk about the species that are declining that we want to recover. Next slide. So this is a simple framework that I hope will help companies engage, because today not many companies like Bracell are actually measuring much on nature, and so we need more companies. We need to create also a level playing field and a comparable way of measuring performance so that the front runners are rewarded versus the laggards. But let me finish with this slide, which is about the probably biggest change that needs to happen in our mind as well as in our economic system. The way we value nature. Because today, in our economic system, in our financial model, nature acquires an economic value only when it's dead. When a tree is cut down, when a fish is fished out of the river or the ocean, not when a tree is part of a forest, not when a fish is part of an ecosystem like the ocean, super important for the stability of the planet. And of course, nature will continue to be used. Trees will continue to be cut down and sold as timber for a number of uses. Of course, that will continue. But what needs to happen at the same time, next slide, we need also to put a value, an economic value on living nature. Because today, a living forest, is worth 0 economically. And that's just give a forest no chance to compete with pressures of economic development that destroy that forest. So that's ultimately the big change that needs to happen. And I hope that the awareness that I mentioned earlier, I hope that making things easier for companies to measure their performance and develop nature positive strategies will get us there. We need to move fast, and we need to do this not only for the nature and the wildlife that we love, but for ourselves, and particularly for our children and generation to come. That's our responsibility. That's our choice. And the choice, I think, is very clear. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your attention. And I'm happy to answer a few questions if there is time.
Very, very inspiring, really. And now we begin our Q&A session. A gente começa agora a nossa sessão de perguntas.
We're going to have our Q&A session. We'll be getting questions from the audience, okay? The local audience. And I'd like to start actually asking one question, which okay, never mind. I will get a question from the audience.
Vision about logistic of the future, mainly for the forest segment. A question from Marcelo Parisotto.
Yeah, Marcelo, thank you for the question. I think Marcio and Praveen has described that vision already. It's about for companies that have had an impact on nature, because every company has, most company had, to compensate that with investments in conservation and restoration in terms of the past impact, the one-to-one that was mentioned before, and potentially more than one-to-one, if you can, of course, that would be even greater. And then, of course, perhaps even more importantly, manage existing operations in a way that they are also positive. They are nature positive. They produce a positive contribution by the practices they utilize, by the reduction of chemical inputs, by the way you maintain some natural features in your plantations to allow, for example, wildlife crossings and migrations. Every place, every landscape, every context is different, and the strategy needs to be tailored to the context. But I think I would say it's about two things. It's about compensating the past impact, but also, and particularly important, adopting nature positive practices to the current plantations so that they do also help recover nature in the production sites.
Thank you, Marco. So what are your expectations for COP30, and what outcomes do you believe are essential for the global nature positive agenda to advance?
Yeah, so I think COP30 and President Lula and the presidency are very clear. We're very clear from the beginning. Wants to be the climate and nature and people conference, right? It is a COP. It's really integrating as much as possible the two narrative, the two issues, the carbon neutrality and the nature positive goals. And the fact that it's organizing in Belém at the near the mouth of the Amazon in the forest is very symbolic as well. So I would say maybe not big decisions in COP expected, but it's so important that the conversation about the urgency of the climate transition and the integration with the nature agenda continues and is very loud, so that at a time when some leaders, and there is no mystery about that, right? Some leaders are denying climate change and talking about nature conservation as an obstacle to development. COP30 is the opportunity for a large part of the world, a large part of the business, because that's still the majority, to say, no, we believe that climate change and nature loss are existential threats. We want to stay the course, and we want to deliver a carbon neutral and nature positive future. That's what I think will be powerful of COP30, and I'm very confident that that will be the message.
And if Brazil aims to fulfill its potential as a key player in climate negotiations, energy transition, and the bioeconomy, what do you see as the country's biggest challenges and perhaps its greatest opportunities?
I think the challenge of Brazil is the challenge of the world in every other country, is to really develop a narrative which is persuasive, which is clear about the future, about the need for change. Because, change is something that is always uncertain. We humans and every other species on the planet has been wired by evolution not to change, really, because change is uncertain and potentially risky. So we prefer status quo when it's safe. And until now, it's been safe. The old model has been, as I said earlier, quite safe. So I think that narrative about the future, a future that is actually better than the present, that will continue to provide benefits to people, that is not going back, but actually is the only way we can go forward. That narrative needs to be delivered to the people of the country so that they support the government efforts to move forward. And that's that's an issue that is not yet that clear to many people. Countries everywhere in the world are polarized. Half of the country believes in the change, half of the country it is scared of the change and believes lies, sorry to use a strong word, lies about the fact that we should stay where we are, we should continue to pump fossil fuel out of the ground, and we should continue to deforest, to make space to agriculture without any concern. Those are lies, but they are easy lies because they are presenting an easy solution. Don't change. And I think we need to build a narrative which is about a better future through change.
How can the forest industry and biodiversity protection evolve together in a truly nature-positive economy?
I think perhaps the forest sectors, together with the agriculture and mining, these are sectors that have a direct presence, a direct impact, a direct footprint on a place, on a landscape, on a seascape as well. They have the ability to really, first of all, avoid avoidable impacts. That's the first step. Secondly, it is about reducing the impacts which are still happening. And thirdly, of course, compensate the unavoidable impact. And all these activities needs to happen at the operational site, but in some cases also outside the operational site, in the landscape. Because let's take, for example, water security, water access for companies like forestry that operates in certain areas, and agriculture, the same for mining, the same for actually almost every sector. That water, that stability of the climate is not depending only on your site, it depends on a broader landscape. And so working collaboratively with other players in the landscape is also important to have a real impact at scale and de-risk the operations, for example, securing access to water and stable local climate.
Nature positive has become a powerful rallying call, but how can we ensure it translates into measurable, science-based action rather than just a narrative? And how can businesses and financial institutions genuinely align with a nature positive goal, ensuring credibility and avoiding the trap of greenwashing?
I love that question because, of course, is what we're trying to avoid. Greenwashing is what we try to avoid. The only way to be really credible, but to be honest, it's not just about greenwashing. It's really about adopting a strategy that is effective and actually help the businesses moving forward from managing the risks that otherwise will soon turn into cost and affect the profitability of the business. Apart from the license to operate, social license to operate, like breach of compliance that will emerge. Because, this issue will not go away. Climate and nature laws, if you don't change, will continue, and compliance will come back, regulation will come back, reputational risk will increase, and particularly material risk will increase. So I think it is all about measuring the outcomes of your strategies and demonstrate that you really are reducing the impacts, investing in restoration and conservation, and ultimately achieve a net positive outcome, a nature positive outcome. And that's why we are developing this simple set of metrics, but still science-based and credible, to help business start the journey. Because many businesses haven't yet started the journey. And if we set the bar too high, they won't. And also for a company so advanced like Bracell, you need your peers, and also you need your other sectors operating in your same landscape to also embrace the same transition. You can do that on your own, and you won't stabilize your local climate by yourself. You are an important player, but others are too. So having these metrics adopted by universally by many companies, many sectors at landscape level, that will really deliver a powerful plan that it is truly nature positive.
Marco, thank you so much for your insights and contributions, really.
Thank you, obrigado, Leila, and thank you, everybody.
Muito obrigada.
See you in Belém.
Have a great day. E nós passamos agora ao nosso.
So now we are going to have our first discussion panel, and we're going to discuss the green economy. So taking the green economy context into account, can Brazil turn its assets into a global advantage? How? I'd like to invite former Minister of Finance, former President at BNDES, Mr. Levy, and also the Director of Economic Strategy and Market Relations at Safra, former Governor at Espírito Santo State, and former Governor Paulo Racun. He's the President of the Brazilian Tree Industry Association. Mr. Antonio Joaquim, also from IBA, serving as Vice President of the Board of Directors, and a board member of Bracell, Dexto Melhoramentos, and Fundação Itaú. Of course, joining us online, we have the tireless Ana Tony, Executive Director of COP30. Welcome, Anna. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Anna? Hello, Anna. Welcome, Anna. Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wonderful. So, first of all, welcome, Antonio, Paulo, Joaquim. It's such a pleasure, an honor to have you here in this discussion panel and to be leading this panel, right? You are such amazing experts in your areas. So I'll start with Anna, ladies first, right? Anna, we are gathered here today with business executives, entrepreneurs, and can you hear me well? I think she's having troubles with the sound. She can't hear us. Okay, now she can. Okay, we are gathered here today with business executives, entrepreneurs, and I'd like to talk about the leadership role of private sector in the global climate agenda. You said during an interview with O Globo newspaper, you said that COP's major achievement is to fight climate change. So what are the tangible consequences of it, and how are you fighting climate change and climate crisis? Well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, we are, COP is just around the corner, so I'm really sorry for not being there in person, but congratulations, what a wonderful panel. So what is going to happen at COP30? I think we are marrying, per se, the economy and this fight against climate crisis in a micro and macro way. So we've been witnessing a lot of new businesses, and I think we are going to stand out in regards to forestry economy, biocircular economy, biofuels, and nature positive economy. So all these new businesses that are arising based on our economy, a tropical economy, are actually still coming up. We still have no idea how big it is going to be. We've been working with the private sector, and I do believe that we will get the big picture of business solutions, for instance, businesses that are already happening, but they need to scale up, right? So from a macro perspective, I think we'll be seeing a discussion, an important discussion in regards to the 1.3 trillion, which is mentioned in the report, in the COP30 report, and how we can mobilize all these resources for developing countries, right? You have already been seeing the finance ministers meeting. It was an innovation for the Brazilian government to create a group of finance ministers, right? And to acknowledge the importance of climate financing. So these are things that must be done to gather resources, to collect more resources. We will have specific solutions. We're going to approach specific topics from the private sector, but also we will have the participation and discussion with the ministers of finance so that we can show how these investments can be made, especially in the developing countries. So this is what I mean by this marriage between the economy and the climate change. Mr. Levy, do you prefer to be called Joaquin or Levy? It's okay for me. So in September, you wrote a very interesting article about what biodiversity stands for. It would be the younger sibling of climate, right? That's what you mentioned. But it has a very a big importance in regards to the economy. And Brazil has made great strides despite of the challenges. What are the main challenges, and how can Brazil be at the forefront of these changes and discussions?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's really great to be joining this seminar and the concern that everybody's showing with, climate and biodiversity. I can start off and speak from my sector. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. The president can correct me if I'm wrong, but today, when we talk about the planet forests, we see a great concern with biodiversity. The system with we use some mosaics so that things will not be monotonous. We should foster more biodiversity in industrial plants. That's a very well acknowledged practice in Brazil, and I cannot see it everywhere where you don't have such a great biodiversity as we have here. Sometimes they have up to 4 types of trees around the plant, but here you'll have many more. But the BNDES is doing an effort to do to plant like native plants so that we can foster this biodiversity. There is a beautiful project in Bahia for planting trees of official wood, and we should create. We can apply cloning techniques based on diversification in this certified wood. The fact that we have protected areas, among other things, is crucial to this whole process. And little by little, we can implement the car and the forest code and the car. Forest code thinks on both economy and biodiversity. In terms of what you can do, for instance, you can do compensations in the same biome so that you can plant, contiguous areas. Instead of doing like a small wood, plant a small wood, you can make use of a favorable areas for agriculture, and you can compensate a few things in greater areas. These areas allow you to have greater biodiversity, and the nature services are more acknowledged. I call a friend who plants avocados. So do you use pollination? Yeah, so we rented some equipment, and when we do not have bees, that pollinizing a forest, you can create an area where you can use those. You're going to produce them, and then you bring those closer to the pollinations, even for soybean. You don't need a pollination, and then you can increase productivity. So we are working for both conservation, because when you try to recover this biome in Brazil with such a great biodiversity, that takes years. So conservation is really important. But also, in the case of main economical activities, we see that in an integrated manner. That's how we see biodiversity grow close to us, closer to us.
Exactly. Solutions based on nature, right? So, Governor and Senator Mr. Paulo Hartung, back to you now. I'd like to hear your thoughts on IBA's annual report. And for those who are not familiar with the institution, they are an organization which represents the sector of cultivated trees for industrial purposes and for the restoration of native forests. So I'd like you to discuss the country's potential for the forestry industry and how can this country have the ideal conditions to explore its full potential with economic gains, social and environmental benefits.
What a joy to be here, Leila. Thank you for moderating this debate. Anna, I would like to wish you, great energy, and I'm really happy to be alongside Joaquin and Antonio, the ministers, and it is a great joy to be here at this event. About the Brazilian industry of trees represents everybody who plants trees in our country for industrial purposes, and also uh, for conservation of trees in our biome. It's a national organization. It issues an annual report. Well, if you ever check the IBA website, the report is available there. I would like to share a few numbers. I'm an economist, you know. The last report we published is really neat because we are working with a 10.5 millions of hectares. We plant, we harvest, and we replant. And we try to conserve in Brazil. We work with 10, like livestock, hundreds of millions, and we work with 10.5 millions. And we try to conserve native areas well beyond what is predicted by law. 7 millions of hectares. This sector last year, we saw that we broke all records according to our report, and this is really interesting. We had the greatest production of pulp and mill, and we had over 25 millions of tons, the greatest in income revenue of the history. So we reached almost the $17 million. And why I'm saying all that? I'm saying this because this report shows something interesting that has to do with what we discussed initially at this debate. It is possible to produce, to have profit, and to conserve nature at the same time. All the examples we mentioned here are great examples to share at international events, including COP30, and we will be hosting this event, and we're going to do it in a very important manner, and we're going to bring the world closer to the Amazonia biome. And I think that is something good our country is doing. Can we scale up those solutions? Yes, we can do this. Do you have homework to do, Leila? We do have a homework to do. We have to fight against illegal actions in the forest and to fight against deforestation. That is really crucial, and to improve countries' regulations. A country like ours that does not have so many financial resources. We need to be a world champion in terms of regulations. How are we going to regulate the carbon footprint market in the country? So we need to learn from the best experiences out in the world and do our best. So how are we going to regulate payment for environmental services? We do have a law, and we need to be a great regulator ourselves. And here's what I have to say: climate plan, sustainable taxonomy. We need to broaden our consensus. So hasty conclusions are not appropriate. Well, I'm talking straight to you, and I think we need to talk more about these two themes. Again, we need to fight against illegal actions, and on the other hand, we need to be able to better regulate so that we're able to attract private capital in order to make the most of this country. So we are greatest. We have great assets. 20% of our world's biodiversity, 12% of a potable water, and we have constant events in many places. We have this great environmental asset, which is extraordinary. We need to turn the tables and to turn this potential into a better life for Brazilians and for everyone in the world. In my perspective, so we have everything at hand, but we have to really go for it. We have to do what the Flamengo club did.
Yes, I'm a Flamenguista, right? I support Flamengo. Mr. Antonio Joaquim, so the green economy goes beyond efficiency. It requires innovation. So how can Brazilian companies make better use of their assets to create new products or services, for instance, that not only comply with regulations, but also stand out and become a competitive advantage in the global market? Do you think that innovation must be more focused on processes, for instance, energy efficiency, saving water, and products using renewable materials, for instance?
Thank you all so much for having me here. Thank you, Bracell. Before saying anything, I would like to highlight how innovative a company it is by itself, a private sector company that comes here to discuss those goals and to decide that publicly, to be so transparent. This is so revolutionary in our country and in the sector as well. Our sector of planet forests, as Paul Tongi mentioned earlier, so we are at the forefront. I've seen work in this sector everywhere in the world, in all continents, and Brazil is a pioneer because we were just starting off at the beginning of the 80s and 80s, and we became a world reference. Many people travel to Brazil, and we used to travel back in the day to visit forests, and many people come to Brazil to see what we have. I think the sector can play both in solutions and services and products as well. And we see this happen in an extraordinary manner. Somebody mentioned here earlier a few big projects focus on conservation, not only on planning forest reproduction. Here we see a clear example in the work that Bracell is leading. Bracell shows that public and private can work hand in hand. Sometimes the public sector can conserve many areas, but they do not have the financial resources to make that happen. Conserving nature costs a lot of money, costs many financial resources, and we need to generate those resources through economic activities and so that many companies and the government itself can conserve nature. I firmly believe that innovation is an important factor. Private and public should go hand in hand. This should be, like a common thing, but it's not. We already saw NGOs, third sector, private sector, and we see the government working together. I see the Secretary of Mato Grosso do Sul state where they have a great entrepreneurship and many companies being established in their state on a win-win relationship, and products. I see that innovation has played an important role. And here's what I see. I think work should be carried out collaboratively between companies and many other entrepreneurship areas in an open platform. There's been lots of close the technological initiatives that should be more open to sectors because everybody can benefit from this because Brazil is a great environmental power, and I think we can compete even more. I think we still have to produce in terms of genetics and soil conservation, in terms of soil fertilization in a more sustainable manner. And I believe that Brazil can heavily contribute to this discussion. I've been catching up on some projects where they developed a short rotation forest for providing energy for all the west coasts in the U.S. And here's what I think. Well, I think we can invest and innovate at the same time. In the U.S., well, I'm going to visit forests for products focused on energy production, like young forests being cut. And when you developed an agricultural forest, you're developing the environment. So they're not being cut; they're being harvested, actually, right? There's a lot of room for development in processes and products as well.
I was in Japan. I've been to Japan recently, and I've seen those trees and those forests. It's amazing, right? Dear Anna, Ambassador André Correia do Lago recently stated during an interview that previous COP presidencies had focused on the event itself, whereas Brazil has been focusing on processes. So, how has this process been unfolding just weeks before the conference, right? And what achievements in the multilateral negotiation framework can you highlight? Of course, taking the country's targets into account. Excellent question. Excellent question. People ask me often, very often, is COP going to be successful? Do you think we're going to have the results that we want? We're going to achieve what we want. So I think it's already being successful. Joaquim, Antonio have been seeing the level of discussion that we are bringing to the world. COP30 is not what is going to happen during the 2 weeks only. No, of course, these 2 weeks are important. However, it's all about discussions and exchanging ideas. I believe that the more discussions we have, the more we are going to focus on environmental integrity. And this is the process that we are bringing to the table. This is what COP30 represents, and it's going to bear fruit. It's not only going to bear fruit during COP30. By the way, it starts in November, and there's a long way to go as far as being being the head of COP30 next year as well. Not only this year, but also in the upcoming years. It's a call for a task force to change the current scenario because we've seen several actions being taken all over the planet, right? We're going to have this force task for CAR, a group of governors joining forces with the public and private sector to validate CAR in other states. And this only happened because we are holding COP30 in Brazil. So as André said, COP became a process, and as leaders of COP, we have to mobilize people so that we can harvest not only during COP but also next year and the upcoming years, right? There's no doubt in my mind that the minute we finish COP 30, we will be on the headlines, and the headlines will be positive. Well, bear in mind that back in Rio '92, the headlines were about the conference being a complete disaster, and it was just the contrary, just the opposite. Look at how much we bared fruit ever since Rio '92. So anyway, first of all, we are going to show that multilateralism is alive and it's strong. It's going strong. Of course, we are facing a very, very, very difficult geopolitical moment, but these moments actually test institutions to see how strong they are. So we've seen ever since the beginning of this year how crazy the world has been, and a country left the Paris Agreement. We didn't leave Paris Agreement. We never had negotiations that we failed. We talk about synergy, negotiations, conventions. It's all about financing. It's about discussing those topics, and that will prove the world that we are heading the right direction, and everybody wants to head towards this direction. So we need to speed up and implement everything that needs to be implemented, and that's what COP30 is here for. That's why it's so important for the private sectors and public sectors to participate. They are at the forefront of the implementation of these projects. And in that sense, here in Brazil, Paulo Tunga has already mentioned, we have the Plano Clima, which is being developed ever since President Lula took office. So the debates are quite hard, but it's about the sectors being mature and working on a sectorial planning. And this is all important. And in that sense, COP30 is a process, an ongoing process. We are going to bear fruit of these processes. The end of by the end of November, I guess. But the trees will actually start growing, I would say, in 2 or 3 years. But I'm really, really glad that we are joining forces and everybody is helping us to make it a successful event. Thank you, Anna. By the way, I want to deep dive into this topic, into geopolitics. If you have questions, by the way, make sure you point at the QR code. You can point your device to the QR code and write your question. When you write a question, please make sure you write down who your question is to. So, Paulo, Brazil has made the commitment to restore 12 million hectares of native forest by 2030. Such commitment was announced in 2015 when we signed the Paris Agreement. It's crucial to speed up processes and meet this target, of course. So could you elaborate on new business models that capture CO2 while trees grow and are replanted?
This is a commitment of our country. This is being addressed slowly, in my opinion. I think we are behind in this commitment that we have taken. And we have to remember that our country has 100 million of anthropic trees, because these are lands and that can be converted, including by conservation. You mean this is land that man has stepped on. It has been pasture, coffee plantations, and so on and so forth. So I think we can convert these areas into restoration. We can convert for the production of energy or beans or grains. So there is no place on earth that we have a potential like this one. And the ones that had this potential is they are at war. But I think we are delayed, and we have to have that in mind. But we have innovative initiatives. We have ambassadors that colors here, and we visit Symbiose, which is a project in the south of Bahia, and this is a business model, and this is about forestry, native forest, and it's standing on its own feet. And big techs are investing money on this project in order to compensate their emissions. And this is very interesting to visit that project. And in below the umbrella of IBA, we have a Biomas, which is a new company that is working on the restoration of native forests with another approach, which is the carbon emissions. We have IBAC, we have in Carbon to Nature. So these are companies that are working on these things, that are working on the environment. So what we need, I will resume this conversation. We need regulation, and we need to take care. We have to stop producing jabuticaba. It's a native fruit here in Brazil. So we need inspiration from good practice all over the world, and this will help us to stand on our own feet with these differentiated business models. And some people would say that we need a governmental incentive, and I don't like it, but I'm not against it. But I think we have to take care. We have to have a good design. We have this tradition of capturing public policies, small groups of interest. So you start this program, which is temporary to leverage a certain sector, and then this program will be appropriated to generate income to a certain group to be dominated by lobbyists. So I think we have this first design at the Brazilian Development Bank that Levi has talked about, and we have to work on this thing very carefully. We need to push it as we do in human activity. We have to give a push so they can work on their own. They can be good for the economy. And we know that the Brazilian Development Bank created these credit facilities for the agricultural sector, and Brazil does not depend on them anymore. So we had this incentive back then, but now we see that the sector has its own ability to do their own income, and this is so powerful here in Brazil and also all over the world. And we Brazil here we are manufacturing aircrafts by Embraer. We are producing electric motors. So we also are proud of this sector of trees, of industrial trees. And in the future, we can be a reference also in restoration. So we have everything to make it work. And this is a robust commitment, 12 million hectares of restoration of native forests. This is very difficult. It's a challenge, but I think it's possible.
So, Antonio, the capital market has been increasingly aware of ESG practices, right? How can Brazilian companies apply ESG best practices to attract low cost capital and stand out in the global investment scenario?
I think the ESG nowadays it's not only about attracting capital. I remember when they started to talk about ESG, so people would see opportunities. So let's say of getting market share or making money or receiving a premium price for products that would be associated with ESG. But now it has become a barrier for these companies. So this is a must to have. So people who don't have it will be out of the market. So now I would like to make a remark which Paulo said here very well. It's a very well pointed. In this whole process of ESG, so we can achieve these ambitious targets. I think it will be difficult to achieve them. We need to deregulate the sector because we don't have a correct regulation for the carbon market in Brazil, because other countries like Colombia and a company that would be an officer to, they would market carbon credit for 6 years, and now we in Brazil we are not even marketing 1 ton. So these are challenges, these are difficulties that we have here. So I think we need regulation. And I think in terms of ESG, companies have a big opportunity because all investment funds, all of them have this ESG vision, and all of them are in Brazil investing in companies and they are using ESG. So I think we can show this aspect to the world, and I think the big companies and publicly traded companies are doing this, and it's a the difficulty is, the challenge is how we can show this potential to the world. I don't know, maybe the government could provide financing or credit facilities so farmers and medium-sized companies can participate in this market. I see a lot of money in the world looking for good projects and they don't find these good projects. And I think they could be financed somehow. And I believe this is a way of promoting, of fostering this project. And I also believe that the financial markets will be open to projects with a solid ESG.
So we'll be discussing the carbon market further, but in regards to the climate crisis, you are an expert on the climate financing, right? So BNDES, you worked for BNDES, for the World Bank, but ever since the Paris assignment, how would you see the management of these resources, private public organisms for initiatives and adaptation and prevention?
I think this is a very complex subject because with this climate subject has many things involved, and it has to do with development. And sometimes things that we don't see about climate finance, we don't see in terms of development, even because the climate project is more difficult than other development projects. But we have a problem in terms of climate finance, which is a problem of development and also finance that we know. And we see these geopolitical developments, we see more complicated problems because they have this indebtedness because of the COVID. So this is why we have to work together, have collective work, and we have a CEO, Anatoni, and they talked about the objectives of 1.3 billion. We also have some finance to the forests, but I have to be a paradoxal here because we have to look into the Brazil context because there are many climate things in Brazil happening that need to be financed because many of the Brazilian laws, they talk about biodiversity and they are based on the economy, on the economic conditions. So there is no problem if you finance biofuels, new generation of biodiesel or biomethane. maybe chips and restoration, wood chips, and restoration is today in many cases it is associated with some economic activity. There are some projects that you can plant eucalyptus in somewhere. We have projects related to this, and together with that, you can plant some native forest. Maybe you can have a cocoa plantation, and maybe many other types of foods that can be planted with eucalyptus. And maybe they will not have this global market in terms of carbon, but they will generate income for restoration projects. So this is associated with the forest that we are dealing here today. In Bahia, you have this legal timber. So these things are related to the economic nature. We have legislation related to it, and this will favor the finance by international funds or even domestic funds, and so on and so forth. So I think if we can evolve, and I think this evolution will happen in terms of evolution, we have to have a clarity on this. Of course, we will attract capital. And of course, we also need some smaller initiatives that need finance. But even though talking about these ones, and we have our CEO here that brought some incredible news. She said, regulation is important. So if you have this collective work by governance to have this program organized with all the tools that we have, satellite, mapping, AI, the Brazilian knowledge and innovation is so important to do this. So they know exactly the initiatives that we can use in order to maximize the production and also to recover some forests, some areas. So if we use all this knowledge and have political willingness of this collective work of governors and municipalities, and this is something that has to involve all the governors of Brazil. So if we can achieve this, it will be a revolution for us. And it will provide legal security to Brazil. And you can also have a relationship with land regulation as well. So let's connect this with the technological tools that we have. It's not difficult to do this. And you have a leap. You have new opportunities for Brazil. And even in areas that we don't even talk about, even in settlements. So you can create new business opportunities. And you can create the possibility of payments for environmental services. So you have people not only from the government, people from the private sector, and we also decrease the deforestation by small farmers. So we have a number of possibilities. We can mobilize the finance, because if you have this good environment, legal and financing and economic environment, things in the economy will happen. And we see many opportunities in Brazil. And for the climate finance, this is very important. COP30 can highlight this. I think we can improve this, because otherwise we will be fighting for the financing by development banks or other types of finance. And of course, they have their role, but we can show the world. We have a country where the financing of projects that are aligned to the climate, they are consistent with the climate targets, with biodiversity targets. So you have that money available. They can be provided by personal investors. So you can have a debenture, we can have investment funds, You can have many type of papers, green papers. So there are many ways to finance this. So when there are many ways of individuals investing in financial and climate finance with a very well structured projects, and we can take advantage of all this wealth that we have in Brazil in terms of natural resources of many types. And we also create the foundation for the global market of carbon credits. So you cannot just wait for development banks to provide financing, because some of them, or well, many of them have problems in terms of taxes. And we have this carbon market based on nature, can be a tool that we can use to finance things related to the climate in Brazil or Africa and Asia. I know that President André is working very hard on this, so we can advance on this new chapter of mobilization in many global markets in terms of carbon. So we have many opportunities, and many of them require economic courage.
So, for those who are not familiar, what would a car stand for? Well, it's a registration. So, for each farm needs to have this registration and abide by the laws, and so that's what it means.
So if we have a deficiency, you may have the recovery. In this plan, we have a certain difficulties to implement them, but we have tools now, AI tools, for instance, and it's easier now to make them work and can provide the security to many environmental entities at state level. And we can have this standardization of the service. And this is something that is subtle. So if you use a general tool, you can recover the properties looking to the whole farm, not only the specific farm. You can see the whole region. So you have this multiplying factor. And the last stage that I mentioned is that if we have regulation of the land, we know that the farmer will have a legal security to work. And also we have a climate change going on, and no bank will make a loan to you if you are not complying with the environmental laws. So you have many types of credit facilities, but they will not provide them to you if you don't comply with the law. And I'm talking about public banks and also private banks. So the farmers have to comply with the laws.
Thank you, Joaquin. Well, we have run out of time. I know that Anna is in a hurry. She needs to leave us. I bet you've been very busy, by the way, organizing COP. So I'll try to be as blunt as possible. First of all, you talked about the general scenario, wars that are challenging international laws, crisis of multilateral entities that were the foundation of the international system for decades. And we've been witnessing protectionism, populism, and nationalism in several countries. So how can we, despite of all adversities, be successful fighting climate change, which is something that we can only be done by joining forces globally? You also mentioned about the processes of the private sector. What kind of discussions does the presidency need to have in order to include the private sector during this process of the conference? So this is top priority. You've already mentioned that, but I want to hear from you. I know it's a challenge to wrap up in only 2 minutes, but you can go ahead and do so. Thank you, Leila. Thank you. I'm sorry for being in such a hurry. First of all, thank you very much for writing this report. What a wonderful report. Uh, all guys from APU, Coalizão, and they showed the protagonism of the Brazilian forests facing the crisis, the climate crisis, which is exactly what Mr. Joaquim Antonio Hatunga have mentioned. We have a narrative, right, that states the importance of these forests and the importance of the conservation of these forests and the native forests. So we need to bring this to the table. This is key. There are taboos, of course, but Brazil is in the main role now, is leading the way. So it all started as food for thought in the sector, but we need to get there together with one concise narrative. This is key. We all have to defend the same narrative so that, along with the public sector and this strong narrative, we can start COP30 with better negotiations, with a better agenda, defending one single agenda and one single cause. So before I get to geopolitics aspects, you mentioned several topics, by the way, that are very important for us in Brazil. Biofuels, as we mentioned, carbon credit, carbon market is very important. Joaquin, by the way, has been keeping track of this debate internationally speaking, and we have a really hard time making progress in regards to carbon market. We met with CCPC members, but yes, this is an important part of a solution. I mean, we work with the COP presidency, the private sector, but it's important to take the carbon credit into account and the importance of carbon credit, which is fundamental, is key. We heard that a new secretary focused on carbon credit is going to be designed with this purpose. So, of course, we're going to be making the most of COP to make these announcements. And back to geopolitics now. We have several topics that are quite worrisome in regards to geopolitics. President Lula, when he led the way to hosting COP30, little did we know how this would impact our event. We have commercial crisis, we have the taxation war, and so on, conflicts. We have a climate geopolitics as well. United States left the Paris Agreement. We saw that recently with the IMO. COP is not a bubble, by the way. It is going to suffer the consequences of this current politics, not only in Brazil, but many countries. So when you can look at the glass half full or half empty. I am an optimistic person, so I choose to look at the glass half full. But in moments of tension, we test the resilience of the institutions, right, that were created. So the climate regulations are showing that even though, despite of everything, it's proving to be resilient, and we're going to reach a consensus. We're going to reach negotiations, action plans. We're going to be able to negotiate despite of all the geopolitical aspects. So we are heading towards a resilient economy based on nature, decarbonized, and this is the way to go. This is the only way to go, because as long as we have political and environmental problems, I mean, they're not going to stop, right? However, the climate consequences are there. They are knocking on our doors, and they're quite severe. So they're changing the climate, they're changing agriculture. So the climate change actions are necessary because the problems will not stop due to geopolitical issues now. So, of course, we wanted to take strides faster towards our direction. But we need to do that to move forward with the private sector, with society, and the countries that will be attending COP30. Despite of the geopolitical scenario, I think our role is to keep walking towards the direction we have set to achieve. All right. We need to be concrete and hope that the political scenario and economic scenario will improve, especially the geopolitical scenario. But thank you very much, by the way, Paulo, Joaquin, Antonio, and Leila. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was an honor to be part of this discussion panel. Thank you very much, Anna. Great job. Great job. So to wrap up now, we have a question from the audience. Eduardo José Miranda asks Paulo a question. The paper and pulp industry has logistics challenges. A lot of vehicles are run in diesel fuel, and they are responsible for CO2 emissions. So how do you see solutions, sustainable solutions for this sector? So this is our last question, by the way, okay? Because we are running out of time. I'm sorry.
First of all, thank you so much for your question. If it's the last question, I would like to greet the Bracell team present here on behalf of Praveen. But I would like to miss out on this opportunity to congratulate two people who are present here. They were putting this. They were in charge of putting this event together. Second edition. Luis, congratulations on the organization of this event, and Julie as well, who took charge and who offered us an event that is really important for the sector, and it is also living up to Bracell's expectation. It measures up. This sector is working for just decarbonizing all its operations. If we look what the industrial plants, which were recently inaugurated, how they evolved in general, energy 100% coming from forestry biomass. We've been evolving waste, so there's like zero waste at this plant, and we have an ambition on optimizing transport for the agriculture from the industrial plants and from the industrial plants to our clients either in Brazil or abroad, even in Brazil and abroad. This is not an effort only for cultivated tree sectors, but it's an effort by many other sectors in our country. And I agree with Anna. I'm an optimist, and we'll be decarbonizing transport little by little. Well, Leila, if you still allow me, I would like to go back and say having COP in Brazil was an awesome feat, and it was really important to bring all leaders of the world to visit a biome that they talk about, and now they have an opportunity to visit our forest. It's not an easy COP because the world is turned upside down. We need to know that. We need to talk about that more frankly so that we are able to understand our ambitions and balance them out. One of the most industrialized companies that has the greatest military force, and they're leaving the Paris Agreement, and that increases our challenge. And a new war in Europe is of great impact. And I couldn't believe to see armed conflicts in Europe. Why this is impact? Well, because Europe was financing in climate, but because of this new geopolitical context, they are investing in weapons. This is not an easy challenge to tackle. I've already talked to André and Ana, both great friends of mine. I believe that the COP30 Great Challenge is to understand where your ambition is and to build a solid bridge to do this task, which is deal with climate change and biodiversity. I believe we need to have innovation, leadership, measuring up to this great challenge. I haven't been asked about it, but you talked so much about it, that I would like to contribute to it and add up to it. Thank you, Leila.
You're more than welcome to voice your opinion. It's okay. Thank you so much. What a great panel. Thank you, guys. I was told we have, it's time for the official picture to be taken.
Pessoal, a gente vai então.
So now we are going to be heading to the second panel, and we are going to be discussing how private and public sectors will foster the green economy transition, and how can the government and companies work side by side. In order to start this panel, I'd like to invite Júlio Gama. Júlio Gama is the Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Bracell. Júlio, I'll hand it over to you now.
Esperar os cumprimentos ali.
Minister, thank you so much once again. And thank you all so much. Leila, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. When we thought about this event's context, I see that we were going down the right direction. Words came straight to our mind. Action and collaboration. We heard it many times. So we're down the right path. So I think it's clear to everybody, we're almost going to start our COP, and we really hope to see some action. And it's even clearer that we cannot work alone. And in case of our industry, an industry of a middle and high degree of collaboration. So collaborating with our government is important. So I would like to bring light to this matter and understand how public and private sector can trigger green transition. The answer is complex, but we should think of collaboration, building on same goals, understanding challenges, and mutual understanding towards sustainable growth. The companies have a role to play. They have to invest in innovation. They have to invest in social and pay tributes and foster jobs. And we have to improve the neighboring communities. And also, the regulatory framework should be defined through public policies that juggle environmental sustainability, environmental development, and we should also offer good infrastructure, logistics, and energy structure. And as I said before, we know that the theme is really complex. And that's why we invited three experts to join us. Two secretaries who are called like super secretaries, and I'm not inventing this. They're experts. And Natalia Rezende, the secretary, just landed from Japan. Thank you so much for making this effort and being here. And Leila is going to introduce you to everybody formally, and I did the easy bit, and I'll pass the floor to Leila. But before doing so, I would like to invite you all to do something and acknowledge. I would like to invite you all to watch the New Roots Choices for Future documentary. I watched this documentary a couple of weeks ago. It's already available on Discovery Channel and HBO Channel. It's an unparalleled documentary. For the first time, this sector works on this documentary for high significant. They share stories from real people. There's three characters and other companies collaborating with this documentary, and this documentary gives lots of visibility to the sector, and it joins science innovation and sustainability. Here's my acknowledgments. I would like to acknowledge the team of Bracell for organizing this event. I try to motivate the team to work the way they do. Congrats on the event that you put together. It's not easy to do this, so it's been months before we were here. Last but not least, I would like to especially thank our CEO, Previnho. Thank you so much for believing in the importance of a company like Bracell. It's important to do this accountability publicly, showing this public commitment. You know, there's going to be obstacles and bottlenecks here and there, but more important than that is not the event itself. And I hope that it does not end here, of course, that we're about to end this event, but I would like to acknowledge and thank you for putting this engagement into your political actions every day. Thank you for inspiring us, Leila.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julio. I'd like to invite the environmental secretary and logistics of Sao Paulo, Ms. Natalia Rezende. I also like to invite the Secretary of Science, Environment and Technology, Mr. Jaime Verruc from Mato Grosso do Sul State, and the Ambassador José Carlos Fonseca, the CEO at Embapel and the head of institutional affairs at IBA. So bear in mind, you can and should ask questions by using the QR code on the screen. Send your questions to the participants here in this panel. Make sure you mention who the question is to. I'm going to be taking my seat now. Thank you. All right, back leading this panel. So, Secretary, you may have jet lag, right? I'm kidding. Starting with a very broad or comprehensive question that I will address to you and Secretary Jaime. So, how is São Paulo State government integrating nature-based solutions into its climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies? And what role does the private sector play in this process? Well, good morning. It's such a pleasure, an honor to be at Bracell's event, especially in a panel, in a discussion panel with such experts of the industry. Not long ago, I participated in this green energy panel. So Brazil is a leader when it comes to green energy. Sao Paulo State has a very strong presence. Leila If I make any mistakes, I'll blame it on jet lag, okay? But it's such an honor to be here. I'll talk about Sao Paulo State, and I'll briefly provide some examples for as far as solutions. So we have been working on short, mid, and long-term actions. And of course, we want to involve many players in the industry, right? So I am very thankful for the partnership with Bracell. Thank you so much, Julio, Manuel. Thank you. We've always interacted so actively, right? What a great partnership. And we do need more discussions. It's about having a multi-level governance, and this is necessary. We need to develop this multi-level governance. So we started this strategy back in 2023, focusing on adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. In our governance, we started a board, a climate change board with civil society and private sectors, the main secretaries of São Paulo State as well. And something said here, and I totally agree with, is about planning. Planning, collaboration, everybody needs to be engaged. So in order to coordinate our actions internally, we came up with, we founded this committee so that we could coordinate all the actions. Last year, for instance, when the Secretary of Development and Housing, they came up with this sustainable guidelines for nature. So that was a way to start looking for investments that prioritize nature as a whole. It's just the beginning, but this is how we've been coordinating the work we do with other secretaries. And we do have a lot of challenges, by the way. As you know, the population in Sao Paulo State is 46 million people, but we also have a lot of possibilities and a huge potential. And we want to show this to the world. We want to show that it's possible to do things here, to work on transportation and mobility. We, unfortunately, we have high CO2 emissions. So we want to have a nature-based solution and focus on nature-based solutions. If you're familiar with Cabriúva, a region, we had to improve the drainage system in that area due to the heavy rains. And throughout that extension, we've been implementing bio-based and hydro solutions that are bio-based solutions. So, of course, focusing on green solutions that resonate more with our commitment. In regards to concrete actions, we need to do the talk and walk the walk, right? So we launched a PPP in regards to depolluting Tietê River and Pinheiros River, as well as growing or working on restoring all the native trees by the river banks. So from Pinheiros to Rivapora, 27 kilometers total, so that we could clean the river banks, the river, and improve the water volume, improve the native trees, and the reforestation practices focused on circular economy and also removing the waste there in the rivers. We removed 4.3 million cubic meters of waste from both rivers, which is equivalent to 328,000 trucks, loaded trucks. So what do you want to do with this PPP? We want to provide more nature-based solutions to get rid of waste and residues in the rivers, and of course, we want to make Brazilians and Paulistanos, the locals, to be more proud of their city. So these are just a few examples of our planning processes, governance, and how much we have evolved as a state in regards to green actions, reforestation, and the waste management. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Secretary Jaime. Of course, focusing on Mato Grosso do Sul state, how does the equation work on solutions of mitigation, adaptation, and participation of the sector?
Thank you. I want to thank you for having me here, the Bracell team. And what we heard here from Lambertini earlier this morning, we think about many things. And we think about our own actions, how we contribute to this global scenario that has been provided to us here today. And I think COP30 has fulfilled its role, and it has made Brazil to effectively define its global agenda on climate. So when the new government has arrived, and we want to finish it until November, so we can have a good conference. And talking about this, and as we talk about the local aspect, the state of Mato Grosso do Sul has established a long-term agenda, and it's beyond the administrations. And we want to become a neutral carbon state, so we can measure our emissions, and by 2030 we can be carbon neutral. So this is a solution. So whether private or public can be prepared to capture carbon, and I think this has been fundamental, so we can advance on the climate agenda. And now we have this law, which is called Pro-Clima, for mitigation and adaptation. We have levels of governance, as Natalia explained. One of the problems of Brazil is not having established level of governance. So now the states are taking up this role. So we have this forum for traditional communities, indigenous communities, because we have this criticism from the public opinion that we don't have this, but now we have it, and we want to report it. So one of the things is we have a fund through Proclima that is specifically designed for this. São Paulo also has this one, which is a PSA program. And this is the first program that will buy the right of deforestation. So some people, according to the forest code, they have the right to create some deforestation, and now we have to make it on record, and we have a defined number of trees that you can take down. There are some farmers that have a excess number, and we are working on that. It is a decarbonization project. So we have an inventory of emissions in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, and we have specific negotiations with each farmer to see what they are doing, and it is clear for us. And specifically talking about the fuel in the forestry sector, it's clear that we have to invest on technology to present nature-based solution. And when we talk about nature-positive solutions, of course, we have the green zone and we have blue zones, and this will be an opportunity to present its good nature positive solutions that we are already showing the world, and we can show scale, and we can show how they can be used in economic terms, and they can be applied. So this is a forestry harvest integration is one example. We have more than 3 million hectares of this project. And using these technologies, we can use the measurements according to the climate effectiveness. And of course, the path is established at state level, And as we mentioned here, we have the CAR collective work, and Mato Grosso do Sul is involved in this type of work. We have an automated systems, we have assessment, monitoring, everything is computerized, both in São Paulo and Mato Grosso do Sul. It is not yet validated, so the farmer can get into the system and validate it. But I believe it will be soon implemented because there are some demands by the financial sector so farmers can do that. But I think these three states are at the forefront of this project, and we have the technology that is ready to be replicated to all states of Brazil.
Exactly. This is the biggest incentive more than sanctions, right? So, taking the opportunity from your knowledge on the private sector, what public policies can government implement in order to incentive or to mobilize green investments, and how can the public sector collaborate with sustainable practices, reducing CO2 emissions, and so on?
Good morning, my colleagues here. Secretário, I want to thank Bracell and on behalf of Brevin for having me here. At the first panel here today, we had this presentation of Paulo on the comments and also on the answers. We saw a little bit of what our sector has been performing as we grow trees, and there are some things that we have been doing for decades. And there are many things that we have achieved to get where we are, because Brazil is one of the greatest exporter of cellulose and a big player on wooden panels, paper, vegetal coal and planted trees, metallurgy, iron and metal ore. And in order to achieve this point, there is a combination of aspects, not only one specific thing. And André Correa do Lago that said something that was very striking to me, and I want to remember it here, because when we look into COP30, we don't look at the specific convention. We have to see what has been done over the years to create this business model. And this is a unique one, and it is important to highlight it. And I think the challenge that we have here, that the challenge that I had to face is to translate this uniqueness of Brazil to the rest of the world, because it's a very different one. And Marco Lambertini highlighted this aspect. There are things here that are unique. Our model is unique, so some people don't understand it. And we are at the tropical stripe, and we developed this thing here, so we would import food, and now we are exporting food to the world. And we have this agro industry that is so singular. And of course, it was a work that has been done over the years. We have done reforestation in the 70s, and then the Brazilian Development Bank also provided incentives to this sector. And this is the incentive for the potential that we have, the motivation in order to take up the space. And we have this profile that it's difficult to find in other places of the world. So we have lands available. They can be used for agricultural purposes, for forestry, for restoration. And we have a level of legal security that is very important. And also we have some bottlenecks as the CAR. And of course, these two states that we are represented here are exceptions. But there are some states like the state of Amazonas It's far behind this issue. So this this is a complex reality in Brazil. We are a continental country. We have different regions, and this is a challenge that we have to show the world. We have done this to a certain extent. If we hadn't achieved this, we would not be the exporter that we are today. To be able to convince the customers that we have all over the world. And the former officer from FFC, maybe one of the biggest certifier in the world. So this institution came voluntarily to Brazil in order to Brazil to be certified by this institution because of the set of responsibilities and characteristics that we have here in Brazil. It's a culture of production that enabled us to become this ESG certified country. So this is a work that is done in conjunction with the private sector and the government. And it's also a dialogue with the rest of the world. So they must understand us, how we make a difference in the lives of 2 billion people and the impact, the positive impact that we harvest, we plant. And when we take this development to the countryside, we are taking care of deforestation, and all of these developments are part of this ecosystem, and the government is important at all levels.
Thank you, Ambassador. Secretary Jaime, you've been on missions to India, Japan, and Singapore this year, and major business groups from these countries have expressed interest in investing in Mato Grosso do Sul. So you highlighted the state's potential for pulp and paper production, which is very relevant to today's event and grain production. So is engagement of foreign companies a viable path for Brazilian state governments seeking economic and social development while maintaining sustainability?
We visit the Bracell in Singapore to see the investments that we are making here in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul. And when we came back, we asked ourselves, so people who went to India and Japan, so were they talking about sustainability? So this agenda is so present, and people are talking about this. And did they talk about this? No, they didn't. But this is a barrier that is established. So they are not asking about the criteria that you use or whether you have it or not. So people didn't ask if you are performing deforestation. So in order to have this investment, I must comply with all ESG rules. I think this is important. So the world is important. So this is a barrier. It's not only a condition anymore to be negotiated in order to attract investments. I think this is one thing. It is important to mention. And in this round of negotiations with government, Ronaldo Rimo, so one thing that we talked about was food. So what was the capacity of Brazil to serve this demand for food, the possibility for Brazil to perform the energy transition, and of course this is from fossil fuels to sustainable fuels, and this is another thing that was discussed, and these two primary issues were discussed, and people would say, now we are interested in investing in Brazil. And we went to Japan, and we see this very clear, that this game of energy transition and food security is on the hands of the South, the global South. And when we have this opportunity to present our situation, we see that we are better than they think we are. And we saw all the discussions on the restrictions. And when we had the opportunity to show our situation, they didn't know that we had a satellite to control deforestation. So people would say that they didn't know we have the CIR. in order to control the level of preservation. So this is important to mention also the role of COP30. In the case of Mato Grosso do Sul, we have some investments in terms of beef and also bioenergy and also on pulp. So these are sectors that are strategic for the state of Mato Grosso do Sul.
In regards to copy, Natalia, could you mention a little bit, could you explain what Fina Clima is about? And Marco, what actions of the Sao Paulo state will actually get the biomethane issue solved for the fleet industry? Great question, great question. So let's start with Fina Clima. Fina Clima was actually a mechanism we started along with FIA, USP, the University of Sao Paulo, to provide legal security, visibility, and so on for investments based on green solutions and to provide opportunities for companies. So if you do wish to get more details on the project, you can go ahead and request the details for companies that need to offset their CO2 emissions, that need to work in a better organized and planned way. We have planned and mapped areas that can be restored already. We have already done this mapping. So we created a mechanism to unite these two fronts, supply and demand, okay? Generally speaking, organisms, multilateral companies, and those that want to invest in an organized manner with a very organized and solid compilation of data. So it's about joining FUNBio. FUNBio, you are all familiar with FUNBio. They've been around for a long time with the guidelines and public policies, along with UFSCar, USP University, and society, civil society. So we can scale up the business, right? We have small areas that need to be restored. So Fina Clima is here to do that, to join forces in a more organized way. We're going to start at Paranapanema all the way to Poroapoeira. So it's about restoring the forest, replanting, but also focusing on water safety and forestry safety. We've been restoring more than 25,000 hectares, but also we've been helping the water safety. We've been studying all the water basins in the country, in the state, especially in the dry season and also during floods. We've been suffering from the floods, but also from the droughts or the dry period. So we need to have an additional mechanism that helps us scale up, get financing in a sector that has a serious bottleneck. So in regards to adaptation and resilience, besides water safety, biodiversity, food security, we need to focus on energy. And we have a huge potential in regards to biomethane, right? Where does it come from? 84% of the sector, I would say 60% of the residues come from the bioindustry. So it has a vast potential. We need to focus on regulations, scale, how much can I scale up, and of course, focus on the nature grid. I see FIESP members here that participated and are familiar with this study. So Sao Paulo state reached 6 billion of cubic meters of production. I mean, this is way beyond what we actually needed to consume as far as consumption. So we do produce over 10,000 cubic meters per day, and these these residues, these waste, they come from landfills. So I think by the end of January, we will be concluding the construction, and 58 establishments will be working with biomethane, and they'll be getting this waste from the agriculture industry. We had a road show with our governor, and we were asked about this project. This person who asked the question was from Presidente Prudente. So you see, we are gaining visibility. Of course, supply is an issue. We need to focus on the points where we are going to provide the waste supply. Of course, focusing on regulations and economic aspects. Of course, waste management needs to be integrated if it wants to gain scale among municipalities. So waste management involves over 545 municipalities. So in order to gain a scale, to scale up, I need to get all the municipalities together to work on recycling, waste management, and so on. We've been carrying out a lot of projects on biomethane, biogas, bioeconomy, biodiversity. In practical terms and tangibly speaking, we have united forces and started out with initiatives, FINACLIMA, SPA, and so on. So we have really interesting projects. Wow, yeah, just adding to your question, Ambassador, looking at financial mechanisms such as subsidiaries, fiscal incentives, and energy as a whole, what instruments, governance at all the three levels can turn renewable projects more attractive to companies?
Well, we already talked about this dimension in our sector at the onset of this debate. It's a sector that is way before its time because the new industrial plants emerge with a full circularity. They consume energy, but they generate energy surplus. This is an evolution that took us years to put in practice. We inaugurated Bracell tissue in Lesões, and all the plant roof is a plant of solar energy generation. We've been making progress, and Antonio Joaquim said it right. This used to be a plus that had an added value that was regarded as premium. If you carried out your activities according to these protocols and standards, that's the minimum. On the contrary, today, we should work on new competitive differentials, as I mentioned before, based on the stock of lands and the accumulated technological progress. We've been evolving in innovation. We've always been open to it. We learned this new technology abroad. We brought it to Brazil. We adapted, we localized it. We saw what they were doing abroad, but now the world comes and visit us and see what we're doing. I think innovation policies is crucial to this matter. There's a few good signs in some directions. The BNDES, the FINEP just announced new lines, and our companies are always connected to this issue. They open new startups and joint ventures both in Brazil and abroad that are at the forefront of the innovation initiatives that will result in competitive opportunities. I worked at Itamaraty for 4 years. I was a state secretary. I worked for the finance ministry. I worked for embassies. If the government does not put obstacles, that's already helpful. If there's no high tariffs, that's going to help us. To work in infrastructure, that's a great bottleneck for all productive sectors. Being competitive, despite all the bottlenecks in the transport and excessive tariffs, is a great feat, and it's fruit from a very tenacious effort, and I think the government should collaborate. And we have good signs in states who are like in the loop with this agenda. But a country has a heavy structure due to our Iberic heritage and those licenses which are delayed. We know the obstacles, but this is not only applied to our context. I'm about to wrap up my speech, but there's something I'd like to add. Brazil is lagging behind when it comes to their own carbon market regulation. It's really hard to understand because, it's been lagging behind for a long time. They fought to try to approve a bill that has passed, but we haven't put into action. Brazil has fought with great difficulty in international negotiations at climate convention meetings. We haven't won this game, so we've been trying to convince the other organizations about the role of our forests because we remove carbon in the Kyoto Protocol MDL. So we've been working with this for decades, but the issue isn't settled out, and the emission balance. So we issue those CO, but we remove it from our forests. Paulo mentioned a few important aspects regarding the climate plan that is overcharging the Brazilian agriculture. But if Brazil does it in a hasty way, they're going to generate a unnecessary crisis. There's a technoeconomy that is going to be important for green finances. There's many issues to be settled. On the multilateral discussion in the sixth article of the Paris Agreement that talks about the possibility of the exchanges among countries in terms of finances, purchases and selling of carbon credits. We can negotiate those indices. Many countries are doing this. We thought of a very dogmatic idea that this only going to be acceptable when Brazil meets with their indices. We shouldn't have our course arms. A lot of countries are at the forefront. The government is going to help if the intention is to go beyond those bottlenecks, and we shouldn't remain with our arms crossed.
As the Americans say, food for thought, right? There's a lot to think about. Thank you, Ambassador. So we are almost moving towards the end. I want to ask you, Natalia, about this coalition, Brazil's Observatory for Restoration Study, that mapped areas of restored forests. And how has this process been taking place, and how public and private sectors been working together to drive progress? Perfect. So up to last year, we had really good news. It was the first time in over 15 years that the uh, Atlantic forest was above the target, the conservation targets. So it means that our measurements have been working. Mr. Montovani here in the audience plays an important role in our institution. We pay for environmental services, and we get traditional communities involved in Vale do Ribeiro, São Paulo state. We look at the whole chain, heart of palm production. We want to generate jobs, to create jobs. We work with indigenous peoples. We started working with 3, and now we've been working with a total of 14 indigenous communities. So we also work with fishermen and fishermen communities. We focus on removing waste from the ocean, and so that they can have more income for their families, restoring araucarias trees. Cunha, by the way, have you ever been to Cunha? Is a 20,000 people town, but they have a big production. So we decided to have a PSA program there. We have potential. Brazil has potential, and we need to show it. We have more than 50 PCAs initiatives in São Paulo State, and I'd like to invite you, by the way, to participate it, okay? Go into the secretary's website. We love innovation, okay? In Sao Paulo State, of course, we're focusing on planning and legal security, but within our conservation areas, we want to start the restoration based on carbon credit and based on biodiversity credit. So we mapped areas that could be restored, over 538,000 hectares, close to the roads or the highways, great water resources, everything that could enable us to restore these areas, and using PSA as a form of payment, reducing wildfires. We, of course, addressing all these issues through contracts that can last from 40 to 100 years being renewed. So we worked with the General Attorney's Office, with USP, FIA universities, a model that was already being used, a solid one, and a less bureaucratic model, okay? So as an invitation, I'd like to invite you to get to know a little bit more about this work that we carry out. And I know we are running out of time, I'm sorry, but I'd like to invite you to get to know what we are doing for COP. So we want to display what we do. We want to showcase what a beautiful, sustainable matrix Brazil has. Countries in Europe don't have the biodiversity we have. We need to speak highly of Brazil. So on November 4th and 5th, Parque Vilas Lobos, we're going to have a summit agenda, SP Mais Verde. During this event, we are going to be presenting a few projects so that we can display all the good things we've been doing in Sao Paulo State, but also in Brazil. I have no doubt in my mind that we can have concrete actions, and we are already working towards concrete actions. Thank you, Natalia, Ambassador, Secretary Jaime. Thank you. What an interesting panel. What an interesting discussion. I'd like to now call Julio to the stage for the picture to be taken here. Thank you so much for being here, Editora Global, Bracell. Thank you so much. And thank you for the audience, the local audience, and also the virtual audience. Thank you very much. See you next time.